But due to the fact that there's a lawsuit involved, I'm going to hold off on these, and we'll see what happens on that. They would not be appropriate to discuss it today because of the lawsuit involved with that. So, national security.
Don,
Yes.
we very well may not know the results of that lawsuit till after we adjourn, if that makes any difference on whether you want to ask this question.
I think it's right now the question is moot because of the lawsuit. It's the law. Prop 2 has not gone into effect. Is this correct?
It has gone into
It
effect
has.
unless the
It's
Supreme
law.
Court stays that. It is law.
Okay.
I think Steve and I would be happy to talk.
Would you please then?
Do you have a question, particular question?
Well, a couple of them. Will you honor the will of the Kootenai County voters and promptly enact law to enforce the Medicaid expansion as written? And the Idaho School Board Association endorsed Prop 2 last week. We signed a letter to you with other education stakeholders. We ask that you follow the will of the voters and pass Medicaid expansion.
That's enough. I'm sure there are a bunch of them. Let me just start the discussion. First, let me clarify, because we've got hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of pieces of correspondence in every form you can imagine. Prop 2 is law. It is law right now. The Supreme Court will hear a case that came, and they will hear it on Tuesday, and I actually have a ticket, and I think Senator Vick does as well. We will be in the audience, the very limited audience, hearing the oral arguments on the Supreme Court challenge, or the Supreme Court case. But right now, Prop 2 is law. So I'm going to just spend a couple of minutes and tell you what the budget impacts, because that's really what we're dealing with right now is the budget. How will we deal with the funding mechanism to make this work? And we're not dragging our feet, as some people on voicemails have said to me. They've said, pass the law. We don't get a vote on the law. The public passed the initiative bypassed the legislature, that's the process, and goes right to the governor, and the governor signed it. So we had no vote, except our own as a private citizen, on whether that proposition passed or not. Now, the job of the legislature is to fund that proposition. And perhaps, and I will be very upfront, there are conversations in the State House going on about possible legislation to protect taxpayers from a question that none of us know, and that is, what will the impact be of the financial responsibility of the state? Because all of our surrounding states predicted a certain number of people would sign up for Medicaid expansion, and almost every single state had double or triple the number of people come out to sign up than they expected. We are told that our numbers are better than those of the other states, that our research is better now because it's been longer, and so we'll see. But we don't know. It's a giant question mark. So we're going into this budget year, this budget setting process, with a giant question mark at the top of the page. And we can only estimate how much that will actually cost. Let me give you just a really brief overview. It is expected to cost $21 million out of the state general fund for the first 1/2 of the year, because it's estimated. We're not dragging our feet. I've started to tell you that, as some people have asked me not to do, because the federal government takes a long time to approve the details that go into this expansion. So it's really in the Fed's hands right now, and it will take them, it is estimated that it will take them until January of 2020 for this to go into effect. At that point, we will be in the second half of our fiscal year in Idaho, which our fiscal year ends the end of June. So for that half of a year, it'll cost the state an estimated, big question mark, estimated $21 million. The first full year after that will cost an approximate $42 million. And Within 10 years, it is predicted that the cost factor will be $59 million a year. Those costs are estimates. It includes suspending the CAT fund, the Catastrophic Care Fund, and the Indigent Fund that help the counties deal with people who can't pay for their own health care costs. There are a lot of other places that the money will come from, that other programs that will need to change their budget in order to give some of their money back, because they'll be getting some benefits from the Medicaid expansion, such as corrections and those kinds of situations. But I won't go into detail because we've got pages of numbers that we could rattle off and you'd all be bored to death. However, 21 million for the first half year, 42 for the full year, and up to almost $60 million within 10 years. Those are the estimates. We have no idea what's really going to happen. So that's the information we have right now. We don't really have any more information than the financial estimates.
So I want to just comment a little bit on hers before I say what I wanted to say and why I wanted this question. And the money she's talking about is the 10% state share. That's 10% of the cost of the program, if the estimates are correct. There's been no state in the country whose estimates have been correct. Montana has 10% of their population on Medicaid expansion. If that were to happen in Idaho, that would take our estimates from 62,000 to 170,000, almost tripling the number of people on the program, tripling the budget. So that's a concern. But what I wanted to say is the voters in my district, Legislative District 2, did not support Medicaid expansion, and I intend entirely to follow the will of my voters in my district and do what I can to stop Medicaid expansion in the state of Idaho.
There's a lot of discussion amongst our colleagues in Boise about this, and there is a side that just wants to sit back and wait to see what the Supreme Court does with the issue. There are some that just want to say we're going to give in and let's just do the quote-unquote will of the people. And then there are those of us that are taking a position of we have a lot of considerations before we can decide how we're going to vote on this particular issue. So for me, there's basically three issues. There's the law, first and foremost, which includes the Constitution. Now, we have a lawsuit that's been brought by one of our citizens that has raised some legitimate legal concerns, and we have to take those seriously. Now, we're going to wait to see what I will wait to see what the Supreme Court decides in that case, and I'll also be in the audience for that, before I can make a decision on the law part. But the two other factors are the proper role of government, which I promised my constituents when I was running that I would always adhere to that rule, that I wouldn't vote for anything that would be outside the scope of the proper role of government. And the third is the financial impact. And I agree with Senator Vick. We have no idea what this is going to cost. I, at this point in time, am committed to enforcing that rule of our republic. The will of the people is a majority. We are not a democracy, and we have a duty to obey the law first and foremost in our oaths. And until we know all those other factors, we are not properly in a position to do that. But right now, if we did it alone on the unknown cost factor, to me it would be a sufficient justification to vote against it. But I have serious concerns about this as far as its constitutionality. The lawyer that's drafted the pleadings in the case is a very good, very competent lawyer. He's done a great job in his arguments and his response briefs, and I encourage you to read those because that's an important consideration. So this is not going to go away anytime soon. It's going to be very emotional, but I also am going to follow the will of my voters, and at this point in time, we'll do what I can to make sure that this Medicaid expansion is not imposed. Now, one other thing I want people to keep in mind, when we talk about state money, only 10%, which Senator Dick discussed, where does the rest of this money come from? Well, people say, well, it's federal money. Well, the federal government has two ways to raise revenue. They can do it through taxation, they can do it through borrowing. our current monetary system does not allow them to borrow. They create money out of thin air, which enlarges dramatically our national debt, which could lead to serious inflation or hyperinflation. And that's another intended consequence of this type of irresponsible spending program. So, hope that makes my position clear.